Hello, everyone. Now that we've learned about how much sensitive information GitGuardian is finding on github.com, allow me to present a little bit about GitGuardian and what we're trying to do in terms of cybersecurity software. So, first of all, we've learned about the amount of secrets we find on GitHub, but what about the companies that have been impacted? So in 2022, we can easily name 3 different companies that were impacted that you see here. So first of all, the Toyota, where they had a secret that was exposed and accessible for 5 years on github.com. Second is Globant, an MSP that was breached and where one of their customers' code was compromised. And lastly is Uber, who had another incident. They were one of the very first companies to be impacted by this type of situation, where a secret was accidentally leaked by one of their developers to public GitHub repository, and that was back in 2014. So why is this such a difficult problem to solve? The first reason is it's very hard to know where to look on GitHub. Defining the perimeter is quite a big challenge. We've seen, there's a lot of things going on GitHub. And so what we see is typically a lot of leaks occur on the personal repositories of developers. And that's why it makes it much harder for companies to detect. Second is quality of secrets detection is something that's quite hard to get right. You need to find the right balance between not having too many false alerts, but also not missing too many credentials. And lastly, it's also a case of how to react and how to easily get information to the right people once there is an incident that needs to be investigated. That's one last challenge to mention. So GitGuardian public monitoring, one of the first things that you'll see when you enter the dashboard is that we are able to generate a list of the active developers that belong to your company who are active on github.com. And this allows us to solve the first problem and create the perimeter that needs to be monitored. We then will also alert you in any way that you need. And our alerting is very quick. It takes a few seconds or minutes, depending on how you start measuring. And this allows you to be the first to arrive on the scene in case there is a secret found within your perimeter. So quick overview of the solution. So we have the monitoring aspect with our perimeter definition. We have our best-in-class secrets detection with 350 plus types of secrets that we can find. And we alert you in the way that you need. We also have easy way to share incidents with the right people. So that's from the remediation. And lastly, we also have a function that we call Explore that lets you search through GitGuardian's database of public GitHub activity that goes back to 2018. And this allows you to investigate and hunt for potential threats by looking for your keywords or project names that are relevant to you within our database. So that was a quick introduction to public. What about the internal side? What we see is that when scanning code, there's a lot more secrets that are found in private code than in public. This makes sense intuitively because developers will be paying a bit more attention not to leak sensitive information to a public repository. However, this is actually where our internal monitoring solution comes in, because secrets should not be exposed even in private repositories and anywhere in the SDLC. It's quite bad practice to have these secrets visible, and there are now standards that make it very clear. Most important risk is that someone gets access to your source code, for example. They'll be able to leverage the secrets they find to gain access to other systems. And so lateral movement is going to be a big risk. And well, you have multiple systems that are compromised just because of one secret. So we do see this more and more in some recent attacks, that attackers, when they get access to source code, they will try to use every single secret they find using some open source secret scanners that are available easily and that can be quite useful in this situation. So one of the most famous ones is CodeCov, where one secret leaked actually led to potential compromise code for thousands of companies this one secret can really lead to quite a huge potential impact. So one additional comment about secrets is that when we are looking for them in code, we cannot content ourselves with just looking at the main branch or the current version of code. We need to scan every branch and also look in the commit history, because if a secret is active and gives access to something, it doesn't matter where it's found, it represents a risk. And this is different from other code security tools that might just focus on current version of code, for example. So this is where we see, again, an overview of our product. Remediation on the bottom left is really an important point. Our solution will automate as much as possible in order to allow developers to contribute and help the AppSec team get access to the right information. For example, the best practice when you find a secret is to eventually revoke it and issue a new one, rotate it. But you cannot do that without the risk of breaking things. So you need to first communicate with different teams and with developers in order to make sure this secret is now safe to be revoked. And we make that easy by automating this exchange of information as much as possible. We also allow for prevention measures where we can earlier in the process, for example, locally on the developer workstation, stop secrets from reaching the server, which will save a lot of time because then this secret will no longer need to be remediated. Finally, I would like to give a quick introduction to our latest product called HoneyToken. Here, we actually allow our customers to create a real AWS key, does not give access to anything, but will trigger an alert when someone tries to use it. And this goes back to what I was saying before about how attackers will try to leverage any secret they find when they get access to source code. Use cases. So first of all, intrusion detection. You'll know if someone has gained access to your private code base, and you'll get alerted if they try to use the secret, and you'll know the IP address and the commands that they tried to use. Second is supply chain security, since you can implement these tokens in different locations within your SDLC, including in your CI or in Docker images. And lastly, code leak detection. We can tell you if this key has leaked to a public repository, and specifically on a public GitHub repository. And this would mean that your private source code clearly has made it to a public repository, which might be an instance of code leakage. So there's three main use cases, and we think this is going to be quite a useful tool for many companies. So finally, quick word about GitGuardian before I finish. So we see ourselves as a leader in secrets detection and are now expanding to other areas of code security. We're 100 people based in France and in the USA. And we actually have #1 security application on the GitHub Marketplace, which shows that also developers are using and like to use our solution in order to make sure their code does not contain any secrets. And below, we can see a few names of companies that we work with today. If you have any questions, please let us know. And thank you very much for listening.